I'm Betty Bailey.
I'm her husband, Clyde Evely.
We're on Catawba Meadow Farm in Catawba, Virginia. Our land borders the Appalachian Trail on 3 sides. It's been in the family over 100 years, and I grew up here, and I had family up and down the whole valley, and this was my mother's land that she was born on and grew up on. We were fortunate enough to, when the last sibling of my mother's died, to be able to take over the farm's care, and we consider ourselves stewards of the land. So it was very important to us to keep the land in family as long as we could. The pressure of development was huge for a number of reasons. There have been a number of houses built next door to us that are means that development was encroaching, but also, and probably more importantly, it's just a beautiful, sacred piece of land, and we did not want it to become a housing development or some kind of industrial. We really care about farming, and we wanted to make sure that, it was still available for farming, that someone could afford it. Young farmers have a really hard time getting in and staying in. The financial pressures are huge. And so, at a development value, they can't compete. So we value both of those things, just the beauty of the land and protecting it forever, and also the ability for someone to continue to farm. If it's not someone in our family, at least, that it could stay in farming.
This is the last major area in Roanoke County that has any agriculture to it.
We wanted to preserve this beautiful land that borders the Appalachian Trail and is in the view shed of the trail, and for a lot of people to enjoy. Yeah. We also border the Catawba Creek over here on the mountainside, and so the branch runs into the creek, and thus we're protecting the water there and the fish.
This is a valuable place, not for development, but for agriculture, for recreation, for its view shed, for its beauty, for its wildlife. We have hawks flying through, going south and north in the various times. We have a monarch population that has summered over here and has just left to go south to Mexico. We have the milkweed here that they need, so it's important for that.
After thinking it through, we also talked with my sister, who was then living, and her husband, and they have the adjoining property, so we all went in at the same time doing the conservation easement.
We got some real good benefits in the process of going into the easement. We got a well for the cattle, so that means the cattle didn't need to go down to the branch to drink, and so that kept the water a little bit clearer for Chesapeake Bay.
It's really important to have an organization like Blue Ridge Land Conservancy that can help you walk through all the processes, that has relationships, for example. Someone whose main focus and job is how to preserve and conserve land, and particularly, in our case, farmland. The land itself is very special, and it should be preserved in perpetuity.
I'm David Hurt. I'm a realtor. I'm a farmer. I run a grass-fed beef operation on some conservation easement land here. And this is where I grew up, in my family home place that's protected forever in a conservation easement. My family put this in a conservation easement. My aunt owned the property at the time, and she made a decision along with my parents to preserve this, to make sure it's going to be around as a farm for future generations. Our original home place was built in the early to mid-1800s. My father grew up here, in the 1940s. He was a kid and they were still farming with horses. He tells stories of, corn shucking parties and old-time farm lifestyle. And, I grew up with tractors and everything. My father worked in town. We still had cattle, still had a garden, still try to maintain an agricultural base on the land. My grandfather had a route in Roanoke selling honey and eggs and butter. And we grew wheat here, and now it's primarily cattle, but it's still food that's going into the local economy, feeding local people, and you can't have that without a local land base. And that's one of the things the Land Trust is doing, is help protect places where we can grow food. And we're kind of transitioning now where I'm keeping more cattle on the farm and expanding my grass-fed beef operation, and fortunately have grassland that's still available and protected to keep grazing and producing beef. I come from a family that really does have a strong conservation ethic, a stewardship ethic. The land was important, and my aunt particularly had a lot of discussions over years about what would happen to the place when she was gone. And this easement protects scenic resources. You can see the top of our property from the scenic overlook at Mill Mountain. You catch a glimpse of it on 581 as you come down in Roanoke and see the panoramic view of the mountains. Our land goes from the Roanoke River to the top of the mountain, so this easement protects a lot of scenic resources. It protects water quality by keeping the forest land intact, and that benefits everybody. So, even people who don't visit the land and may not think they use it directly, they benefit from all these easements that foster tourism, all of the benefits we get from bringing people to the valley. And one of the first things anyone will brag on would be the scenic views and the mountains around here. And if they're covered with houses staring down at you, it's not going to be the same. So again, people drive by all the time and say, wow, what a pretty place. And the fact is that that's a scenic resource, and that's a resource that benefits the public too, that's protected. We could sell it if we wanted to, but whoever ended up with the land is going to have to abide by the terms of the easement. So this whole farm's never going to be a subdivision. The forestry provisions in our easement prevent the entire mountain from being clear cut. Having a local land trust is critical. It was critical for our family to have a local resource, to have local people to help us through the process. And you are the guys that show up now to monitor the property, keep a relationship with the landowner. We feel like we're in partnership with the land trust. You guys understand what landowners are trying to accomplish, are sympathetic to that, and I think you're doing great work just helping the whole region to protect some of the resources that benefits everybody. We really don't feel like we've given up anything, and just have the peace of mind that this land is still going to be protected when we're gone.
I'm Hank Hubbard. My given name is Highland Thomas Hubbard III. I go by Hank. And I'm a Lynchburg native. Went away to college, and then after college worked for Aetna and another insurance company. But I was away for 43 years. And my first wife and I graduated from Dunbar High School here, so we were classmates. And were married for close to 50 years, and she unfortunately became ill. Part of our coming back here was because she was ill. We were in Florida trying to make a decision about what to do. And at one point we just turned to each other and said, let's go home. I wasn't one of the original family. My first wife was. And it was her sister, Carolyn, who also unfortunately passed away, who's married to the former fire chief of Lynchburg, William Anderson. They, as a couple, my wife and I as a couple, and then my wife's cousin, Vernon Davis, who's outside of Atlanta, Georgia. We are the three owners of the property. So now, because of the wives having died, William Anderson, Vernon Davis, and I, and now my new wife Ryan, are owners of the farm. My first wife's uncle was the only one at that point who was still alive from the original family. He was the son of the people who originally built that farmhouse. Said, hey, look, we're going to entrust you with this property, but with the proviso that you keep it in the family and that you don't destroy it, don't let it get overdeveloped and all that, And of course, we didn't know fully what that meant, except literally what they said, which is keeping the family. The ownership records go back into the late 1800s. I'm thinking in the 1890s, my first wife's grandfather, John Davis, and his brother Lewis, and then Mary Davis, were able to secure the property. And frankly, it looks as if it might have come from original slave owners, where you can see how property is just being passed, and almost as if to say, okay, you work the land, and we're going to allow you to quote unquote buy. A couple of months ago, I drove up the Pearlville Road going this way through through Gillfield, right? I could not believe, it used to be maybe like 40 homes and a couple of townhouse types of things. There must be at least 100 homes in there and maybe 20 townhouse development. It's fully developed, so you can just kind of feel, I hate to use the word encroachment because I don't own the universe, I just own this, right? So, but it does feel like you're being closed in by development, you know. Every time they can get a patch of land to develop, as you can see along Cottontown Road, they will develop it. Somewhere along the line came the notion of conservation easement. We found that to be probably about the best solution we could find to achieve the original objective, which is to keep it in the family. I think it's important from the standpoint of the fact that a lot of those black farm owners, landowners, probably at some point worked that land, you know, or their folks did before them, their predecessors, who were enslaved people, you know, and they might end up being sharecroppers or whatever on the same land that they used to work once they were freed. So it really has, in many places, not all places, but in many places, it has that strong historical significance, and it's obviously important that way. As it turns out, now that my first wife is deceased and William's wife is deceased, you know, because they were original family, you know, I think there's a sense of pride that we are keeping our commitment. That's kind of important in life, that you do that. And so at one point I had suggested, before we got the easement, I said, well, maybe we guys could sell off a piece and then put some money in for helping pay taxes and things in perpetuity. And you would have thought I said, shoot the sheriff, you know. So it was blasphemous for me even to say that. That was before we got to the easement. I mean, look how beautiful this is. My wife and I were sitting on the porch the other night, just kind of watching as the sky colors change, the sun goes down in the west there, you know. And it's hard to imagine not having this. And just to think that ad infinitum, right, is in perpetuity, that this is protected, you know. So it does feel good.